Hi, it is my pleasure to see you online, although it's online. I can see 4 people, 5 with Josephine. Yeah, it's nice to see you all. Today the subject is about the green transition and collaboration between South Korea and Nordic countries. And before I start about the lecture, I will briefly introduce myself. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I'm a postdoctoral researcher at Lund University now. And as you can see where my department is, I'm basically a political scientist. And I was born in Korea. I studied in Korea for my bachelor's, but then I also did my master's and PhD studies in the UK and Germany, and then the first postdoc in Belgium, and now this is my second postdoc in Sweden. So I have some experience in Korea as well as different European countries in the last, I don't know, 15 years now, more than 15 years. And also, I worked as a journalist in Korea before I started my master degree. And then, so in the whole time, this times in different countries, my focus has been on environmental politics with a particular focus on climate change and biodiversity. So, for example, my PhD was about climate change adaptation in river management sector. I compared Germany and South Korea, as you can see in the book title on the right side. So I analyzed the policy process, and then for postdoc projects, now I'm more focusing on international relations and development. And then for the first postdoc, my focus was on youth participation in environmental politics. And then now I moved on to more on technology and its role, like AI, and how AI reshapes the environmental politics in international relations. So these are my brief introduction about my research interest. And also maybe I just wanted to say that I'm also interested in these collaboration projects between Korea and different countries, like Nordic countries. So now I'm attending this program called SCARIC, Sweden Korea Education Research and Innovation Collaboration Program, since last year. So this is like to exchange ideas and develop like a common project between the 2 countries, scholars and students from the universities. So yeah, so I have been involved in one of these thematic groups in this program the last one year. So this is today's plan. So I will first start with what is green transition and what are current environmental problems, because I assume you are not environmental specialist. I'm not sure. I didn't really hear your introduction, so I prepared some about these topics, and then I will move on to the case of South Korea, its environmental problems, and also policy. Then, the focus will move to the Korea-Nordic cooperation on green transition with some examples, and then finally the conclusion. So, before I start, maybe I should just ask if anyone has a background in environmental politics or these climate energy issues.
No, so far, but I have actually just finished writing a booklet with the executive director, Niklas Wenström, about why South Korea matters to the Nordics, where we do have a chapter about Nordic Korea, green transition cooperation. So I know there's a lot of interesting topics to cover, but I think you should just enlighten us so far. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, you can always, come and talk more about this topic. So yeah, you're welcome to interrupt. I will smaller. Okay, yeah, this is better. Okay, so first, so I will talk briefly about this concept of green transition. I assume many of you are familiar with this concept because the EU is especially a very strong promoter of this concept of green transition, and it is one of their priorities, policy priorities. So this concept is really, I think, popular in the whole Europe. So I also borrowed the explanation from the EU website because, as you know, there is no really single definition for this kind of big concepts, right? So I also borrowed this one of the definitions from the EU. So according to the EU, so they explain their green transition policy with these different categories. So of course, it includes climate action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and yeah, change the energy system so we don't produce too much emissions. But then it is not just about lowering the environmental impact of our activities. Those policies should be also just for vulnerable populations. So this kind of green policy shouldn't only enrich already rich people, right? It should also include different interests and also, yeah, should take account the social justice. And then sustainable development is actually also a big concept, which doesn't just mean environmental sustainability, but also social and economic sustainability. So maybe you have heard about these Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs of the UN. So this is also a part of this green transition policy of the EU. And then, yeah, energy and transport and mobility, these are more like a sectoral approaches to green transition. So when we want to reduce greenhouse gases emissions, then we should also think about not just about energy production, but also about transport, how we can also reduce yeah, emissions from flight or traveling or transporting resources and products. And then we should also think about circular economy. I think this is also a very popular concept. So it doesn't only mean like reducing carbon emissions. We also need to think about the whole production and consumption cycle of many products. Like yeah, and then when we think about like a circle, so we when we want to maximize the effectiveness of our green transition actions, it is better to reuse and recycle all the resources we have already consumed. So this is the basic concept of the circular economy, I would say. So reducing the carbon footprint or environmental footprint through the economic activities is the key, yeah, key aim of this concept, the circular economy. And of course, all these activities should be supported by scientific research and innovation. And then finally, finances is also, they matter as well. So greening public and private finances is also part of a green transition policy of the EU. So yeah, I would say keep all these concepts in mind for the next hour when I talk about the Korean case and the cooperation. Oh, yeah, yeah. So and then when we talk about environmental problems, maybe some would ask why this matters, why the environmental issues matter. Well, then maybe I should also borrow another concept from actually a Swedish scholar called Johan Rockström. Actually, he works in Stockholm Resilience Center. And with his colleagues, he brought this very interesting concept called planetary boundary. Have you heard about this? Okay, yeah. I see somebody shaking. But I'm not going to explain too much in details. I will just briefly explain that this planetary boundary concept refers to these 9 boundaries they defined, like from climate change and novel entity like plastics and ozone and ocean acidification, free water, and so on. So different kind of environmental issues. And then they argue that we shouldn't cross all these safe operating space boundaries in those 9 sectors. If we cross these boundaries, it means that maybe we will have a more dangerous environment for not only for nature, but also for humans. But yeah, and then they regularly update their assessment results since I think 2000, yeah, early 2000s. So when they first assessed which boundaries are crossed and which are not, they said, okay, only 3 boundaries have been crossed, like climate change and biodiversity. But then after about 15 years in 2023, they say, okay, we are already crossing 6 boundaries. So yeah, this is not a good sign that we are not really reducing our impact on the environment. And instead, we are increasing more and more in different sectors. So yeah, it doesn't look good, right? But it doesn't mean that once it's crossed, it's over. We can always try to reduce our impacts on the environment and also go back to the safe boundary space. So yeah, this is to emphasize the importance of our efforts to reduce our impacts on the environment and keep us in a safe space. And then another concept, very popular concept in environmental politics, I would say, is this concept called triple planetary crisis. So together with the planetary boundary concept, now when we talk about environmental issues, we also talk about this triple planetary crisis. What are they? They are the climate change crisis, biodiversity crisis, and pollution. Pollution includes like water, air, and land pollution because of plastic or other chemicals or fine dust. So yeah, this is actually overlapping with the planetary boundaries. So they are not really separate from each other. Yeah, so these are the current environmental this policy discussion, I would say. And then when we narrow down to climate change, because actually later I will also talk about the cooperation between Korea and all the countries, and I think the heavy focus is heavily on energy. So I just briefly wanted to mention that climate change is always this common problem in both planetary boundary and the triple planetary crisis, right? And then what is the reason behind the climate change? Of course, it is the greenhouse gas emissions. And then where does this emission come from? then we can see that more than 30% is from energy system, followed by industry, afulu. Afulu means agriculture, forestry, and land use change. So when we cut down the forest and make more urban areas, these are included in the AFOLU category. And then transport and buildings also take some portion, but then we can see energy is the most important sector to tackle for greenhouse gas emission reduction. Okay, now let's move on to the case of South Korea, because yeah, I prepared this section because I assume you are also not very familiar with the Korean environmental politics and policy, whereas maybe you are more familiar with Nordic countries. So I didn't really prepare a lot for the Nordic countries' environmental policy, but this is more to introduce what's going on in South Korea. So has anyone visited Korea this year or recently? Yeah. In summer or no? Okay. So in my case, I visited Korea this summer, last July, for 2 weeks. And then, yeah, I attended one conference, and then I also met my family and friends. And then the first week of my stay, there was a heat wave. And then the second week of my stay, there was floods. So I was experiencing this very fast changing climate during my stay in Korea this year. So as you can see here on the left-hand side, days over 33 degrees is increasing in the last 60 years. So in the 1960s, we only had like 6 days per year, which had a heat wave, let's say. But then these days, in the 2020s, there are more than 20 days. And I think this year it was even more than 20 days. It is just always making record a number of days, heat wave days in Korea. This report is about Seoul, but it's not just in Seoul. This heat wave is happening all over in South Korea. At the same time, as I said, in summertime, we are also experiencing floods. So this was just this year in southwest part of Korea. And then, yeah, it was in July, and I think in August, there was another very heavy rain storm in mid Korea, like Seoul and around Seoul. So we are experiencing more extreme weather events these years because of the changing climate. And yeah, that's not all. Like last March, we also experienced wildfire in Southeast region in Korea. So this was one of the biggest wildfires in Korean history. And as you can see, there were many towns and cities affected by the wildfire, and many people died or affected, lost their livelihoods, like the mushroom farms and so on. And right now in Kang, this is like a East Coast city in Korea, they are experiencing drought. So this is still ongoing issue in Korea. So they have now record low level of water in their reservoir. So this is really restricting people's livelihoods and of course health and yeah, their health and how do you say mental health as well. So yeah, this is now what is going on in Korea. So of course, people are raising up their voice to the government, like do something about this, especially young people. So, for example, some Korean young people also joined the Fridays for Future movement since 2019 or 18, I think. And they also sued the government in 2020. This Youth for Climate Action, this is the Fridays for Future organization in Korea. So this Youth for Climate Action sued the government in 2020. And then after 4.5 years, in August last year, the Constitutional Court ruled that the absence of legally binding targets in the government's policy was, not really protecting the constitutional rights of future generations. So government should amend their law for better climate policy. So this was regarded as a victory for many young climate activists. But until now, like, after 1 year, they went to the street again to say that nothing has changed. Of course, we have gone through this political turmoil, how can I say? Yeah. So in the last few months, so maybe there was no capacity in the government's offices, but yeah, still after 1 year, we don't see like a major change in the government's climate policy. This is very problematic because Korea is one of the high emission countries in the world. So when we check the per capita emissions, Korea takes the 5th place, just below Saudi Arabia, the US, Canada, and Australia. So yeah, we know that China is also a very big carbon emitter, but when we check the per capita emissions, Korea takes the 5th place. So yeah, there is a reason why young people are raising up their voice to the government. Because yeah, when we see the energy mix, energy supply and electricity generation source, this high emission per capita is understandable. So this is the energy supply from 2023. You can see coal, oil, and natural gas, these fossil fuel sources take, how much is it? About almost like 80% of energy supply in Korea. And then the rest consists of nuclear power, almost like, yeah, 70%. And then, yeah, solar, wind, or geothermal energy takes, I would say, less than 2%. Well, when we check the electricity generation, it looks a little bit better because there is more solar panel and wind energy. But still, coal takes 33% of electricity generation, followed by natural gas and nuclear. So how can we project the future of Korean energy policy? Well, maybe now you know that we now have the new government since last April or May. I can't remember exactly. But then, yeah, we now have the new government, which is a little bit more supportive for renewable energies like solar and wind energy. So we expect that this new government will increase solar and wind energy infrastructure by creating some incentives like a pension system connected to local facilities. So local residents can get more pension when linked to those wind or solar facilities. And Actually, this was before the new government started. There was this special law passed in the parliament for offshore wind energy. So this law will enter into force in 2026. So the Korean government is planning to install like a mega scale offshore wind energy farms. And also they are also talking about infrastructure building to connect renewable energy to industry complexes. So they want to make a power grid under the water surrounding Korea. So it can actually facilitate renewable energy generation and production, consumption. But they are also talking about continuing the operation of nuclear power plants, and also there might be new plants to be built in the future. So this energy policy might also reduce the need of coal or fossil fuel energy. So they want to phase out coal power plants by 2040. Yeah, this is still a long-term future. So I'm not sure how they made all this roadmap to realize this, but this is the current plan. But this energy transition plan is, I think it will have some issues, conflicting issues with this another policy pursued by the new government, which is AI policy. They really want to make Korea as AI one of those the biggest AI countries in the world. And of course, this digital industry consumes so much energy, so it will demand much more electricity in the future. So this is certainly a policy dilemma, how you will realize both energy transition and AI policy in the future. Now let's move on to some plastic policy and practice in Korea, because green transition is not just about energy or greenhouse gas emissions. It is also related to circular economy and pollution. So I think plastic is also a very important issue to talk about under this topic. So first of all, plastic pollution, before we talk about plastic pollution, maybe we should also talk about plastic production. And when we see the global plastic production and who are producing all these plastics, Korea is also taking a very high place there. So it is just behind. So here is the numbers. China, 33%, United States, 12%, India, 5%, and also Korea, 5%. So Korea produces so much plastic in general when we compare with other countries. So yeah, plastic is also a big industry in Korea. But then once it's produced, if we recycle well, it will actually contribute to circular economy, right? So producing plastic is not always a bad thing. If we recycle and reuse and dispose well, it might be not that big environmental issue. But then when we see the plastic waste, the management in Korea, it doesn't it doesn't look very good. So plastic packaging waste generation, I think that's the gray bar. Korea is quite high compared to other countries in this chart. And then when we check the per capita waste generation, Korea is definitely the #1 country here. So it means that individuals, not only the industry, but also maybe the consumers are also, producing so much waste, plastic waste, compared to other countries. But then how are we managing? How are we using this plastic waste? This is another paper, and then it shows how household plastic waste are treated. So, in short, only 13% or 13.5% of all this produced plastic waste is recycled. The rest goes to like incineration, like they are burnt for maybe energy production, or sometimes they are burnt without any kind of energy recovery, or they go to landfills or just leaked. So some percent of this plastic waste, we even don't know where they end up. And so Korea has a low rate of plastic recycling. Although there is a very good system for a separation system. When you visit Korea, you can also see, like in Sweden, people want to separate all the waste for different kind of materials, like paper, plastic, and so on and so on. But then the reality is the recycling rate after all this separation is quite low in Korea. And this is quite a serious problem until now. And of course, the government has tried some different policy practices, but still no major policy to reduce the production and consumption of plastic has been really implemented with strong force, legal force regulation. So there was a ban policy on single-use plastics in cafes and restaurants, like straws, cutlery, or cups, were planned. And then I think in part of Korea, like in Seoul or some cities, they also had this trial, like pilot period for this ban. But then the implementation for the whole country has been delayed for unlimited period. This was decided in the formal government before this May. So personally, I hope the new government will reintroduce this ban on single-use plastic again in the near future. So as you can see, all these problems with single-use plastic can be in a way reduced. So So maybe you wonder why it is so hard to implement environmental policy in Korea, although it is now quite a developed country with a high status of economic well-being. And yes, and yet we have all these struggles to implement like a single-use plastic ban or recycle the plastic waste, or even to reduce fossil fuel energy, electricity generation. Well, I think maybe this concept is helpful to understand the situation, the developmental state. If you are familiar with East Asian politics, maybe you have heard about this concept, developmental state, because it is a very useful concept already since the 1990s to explain the fast growth in different countries in East Asia, including Korea, Japan, Singapore, Taiwan, and recently also China. So those countries have these common features, like they have especially in the 90s. No, sorry, before 2000. So only not in the 96, maybe after the Second World War in Japan, let's say. They had a very strong the state-controlled finance system through tax or interest rates, exchange rates, or subsidies for the industrial development. So the goal was to achieve very high economic growth. And this is also export-oriented. So the government really supported many companies and corporations to produce different products and export so we can earn more money, basically. So this kind of system created a close relationship between government elites, especially from the Ministry of Economics, and business owners, like these big companies you know from Korea, like Hyundai, Samsung, or LG. All these companies actually grew so fast with this kind of developmental state system. So in the government, but the governments are like not authoritarian governments. They have had certain legitimacy for those economic policies because they have actually achieved very fast economic growth, and this result actually gave them legitimacy to continue such policy. Because as long as there is more material growth, people can accept very fast economic growth policy. But now, maybe this is not the same time compared to the 1970s or 80s. Korea has achieved certain economic growth now, and then it shows also some shift away from only growth at any cost policy. We now take care about the environment, well-being, welfare. So these social kind of policies are also there now. But when you look into what is actually pursued under this name of green growth policy or environmental policy, they show a very strong tendency for like economic-driven or industry-driven policies. So like this green growth policy about 15 years ago, the aim was to become the global leader in carbon emission reduction or eco-friendly industry like hybrid cars or hydrogen economy. So even for the environmental policy, the mindset of developmental state is still there. So this links to this less attention to non-industrial environmental matters like biodiversity protection. So I would say, although there was like a fundamental shift from heavy focus on economic only policy to more like more diverse policy for different goals like environmental protection and economic policy growth. The governments of East Asia, including South Korea, have remained as developmental states, I would say. I don't know. I'm curious about your idea and opinion. So now, for the rest of my time, I want to talk about this Korea Nordic Green Cooperation. So, as long as I see, there is no like a one single framework for Korea and Nordic countries' cooperation on green transition. Instead, I see like a bilateral collaborations between Korea and one country or Korea in another country. So I want to introduce some of these collaboration projects, and then the general tendency of these projects. So first, in 2011, there was this Green Growth Alliance between Denmark and Korea. So they, since this year, they have had this joint commitment to promote a paradigm shift towards green and low carbon economic growth through political, commercial, and technological and research cooperation. So there has been some not like there was no like one single project under this alliance, but there has been like annual conference between the ministers or industries like Danish Energy Agency and Korea Energy Agency. And also some municipalities like municipality of Esbjerg and municipality of Ulsan in Korea, they also signed on an agreement to establish collaboration for offshore wind energy. And recently, because the Korean government is pursuing more offshore wind energy project and wind energy in the future, there are more discussions going on, like how we can collaborate on offshore wind energy. So that was also one of the topics in last year's ministerial conference. I will talk a little bit more about this offshore wind energy cooperation later. And then I found this very interesting project called Sweden plus Korea Green Transition Alliance. This started in 2021, and these members of the alliance are only Swedish companies and the Swedish governmental agencies operating in Korea. So these member companies, you can see the list here. IKEA and Hitachi Energy, all these companies, they are currently working in Korea. And all these companies have committed to reduce carbon emissions so they can contribute to Korea's carbon neutral economy before 2050. So I find this very interesting because this is a public-private partnership among Swedish governmental agencies and Swedish corporations working in Korea. So yeah, I think this is interesting and very positive example how they can make a creative projects to contribute to green transition. And thirdly, this is also a very recent development. There was an agreement on mutual recognition of environmental products between Korea and Norway and between Korea and Sweden. So last year, the Korea Environmental Industry and Technology Institute, which is a public institute, went to Norway and Sweden to make this agreement. So this agreement means environmentally friendly certification products from Korea can be also recognized in these countries, and also vice versa, like products with environmental friendly certificates from Nordic countries can be also recognized in Korea. So as I said before, offshore wind energy is, I think currently maybe the most discussed topic for Korea and Nordic collaboration for green transition. So there are already actually companies operating in Korea for different wind energy projects. like Hexicon. This is a Swedish offshore wind energy corporation. It is coordinating more than 1,000 megawatt project nearby Ulsan. Ulsan is one coastal city, one of the coastal cities in Korea, in nearby Busan, and it has many companies like Hyundai. Hyundai's like headquarters is in Ulsan, so there are many factories related to I think ship and car production and other industries as well. So nearby Ulsan, they are trying to get approval for this big wind energy project called Baram. This is not a photo, so those projects haven't been realized yet. So, but this is this offshore wind energy farm as an example. I just wanted to show. Yeah, so they are now pursuing this kind of big project. And also one Norwegian energy company called Equinor is also developing different wind energy projects in Korea. And then, yeah, there are some more progressed projects include Bandipuri and Donghae. Yeah, I'm not very familiar with all these projects, but I can see that since the Korean government declared like a more incentives for offshore wind energy, I can see there is like a big interest from Nordic countries, especially companies, energy companies. And so they are already engaging in those mega scale projects. But then actually in the future, I also expect that there will be more collaboration for nuclear energy. So this is not just my guess. There are certain developments already. Because one of the reasons is now Nordic countries are getting more interested in nuclear energy themselves. Yeah, after the Russia-Ukraine war, and also there is this boom of AI industry, right? So those two factors actually, I think, influence their enhanced interest in nuclear energy in the future. Like they want more energy security and also more energy for digital industry. So, for example, in Sweden, this year, some months ago, the Swedish parliament has approved their state support framework for nuclear energy. So there might be more new power plants built in Sweden in the future. So this year, there was this Korea-Sweden Energy Transition Forum, and nuclear energy cooperation was one of the main topics in this forum already. And some Korean companies are preparing for those projects in Sweden. So, but not only in Sweden, there has been also a cooperation between Korea and Denmark for small modular reactors. So these small modular reactors, or SMR, this is expected to increase in the future. Although I think we still don't have right technology to realize these SMRs yet, but it is heavily researched by different scholars, engineers, scientists. So yeah, there is a big hope there because they say the SMRs might be safer to operate compared to other these nuclear power plants in the past. Okay, also in Finland, there has been this development, like this early works agreement signed by Hyundai and Finland's Fortum, another energy company, I think, and also this Westinghouse from the US for a new reactor project. So yeah, I think this is the most recent development regarding energy, but I'm not sure if this is for green transition, because personally I'm very skeptical about nuclear energy. Like it can be our alternative energy source for future because of its long-term effect on the environment and the cost. But apparently, this is gaining more and more attention from both sides, from Korea and Nordic countries. And yeah, before the conclusion, I just wanted to mention briefly that there is also this development EU-Korea Green Partnership. So of course, yeah, this is not really precisely about Korea and Nordic cooperation, but there is certainly this partnership going on between the EU and Korea. Like there is this working group on energy, environment, and climate in 2018. And then they want to deepen like political collaboration on energy, environment, and climate change. So I think still this is more like a political like commitment for partnership. But yeah, there is also this broader scale collaboration. Yeah, so to conclude, I would say that there is certainly an increasing number of cooperation and collaboration projects between Korea and Nordic countries for green transition, as I explained before. But the focus has been on mostly about industrial cooperation, particularly on investment in energy infrastructure, like this offshore wind energy or nuclear power plants, or some Korean companies also work for like a grid project in Nordic countries, but mostly mainly about energy infrastructure. And also in the future, this tendency might continue through this nuclear energy sector. So for me, it seems like, yeah, there is this green transition collaboration, but for only a limited area. And there is certainly room for other types of collaboration between, yeah, Korea and Nordic countries for green transition. For example, we can also discuss about how we can collaborate for circular economy, especially for plastic reduction, I would say, because I can see that Korea needs much more efforts for plastic reduction, waste reduction. And also like just transition issues or biodiversity conservation can be promoted through their collaboration. And maybe we don't have to only rely on governmental agencies or industries. Maybe those collaboration can be promoted by different groups like youth or civil society, or other groups can also collaborate. Research institutes, think tanks, they can make more collaboration for different types of green transition policies, in my opinion. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. If you are interested in connecting with me on LinkedIn, this is the QR code, or you can also email me. Thank you.